Coming up next, I had a chance to sit down with Dr. Kimberly Allen for an episode of our new podcast, Kingpins and Catalysts. You may not have had a chance to listen yet, but since it is nearly the eve of Dr. Allen's departure, we thought it was a good time to listen in. We pick it up with the interview in progress. Let's take a listen. How would you describe your childhood in Jacksonville? And what was your first understanding of racial identity as a young person?
It's interesting, and I don't get to tell this story often, but I grew up with a very positive sense of what it meant to be Black because I believe, and I don't know if this was an intentional effort of my family, but we were very protected in terms of where we lived, where we went to school. I said I spent a lot of my days out east. I grew up on the north side. I attended an elementary school from kindergarten to fifth grade that was probably 99% African American. It was always a moment of pride to be considered Black for me. And so when I actually went to middle school, I went to James Weldon Johnson Middle School. The school was so much more diverse, and that was where I had the realization that, oh, there are other definitions of what it means to be Black here in this community. And for the good and bad of it, some interactions with peers, interactions with some interesting educators and folks at the time, I learned very quickly what that meant. It was getting a different understanding of how others saw me as a young Black girl from the North Side.
And that was something you experienced not just from peers, but from teachers in the classroom?
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. But I feel like I still emerged from that with a very positive and healthy sense because I still had my family. My family has always been really important to me. And what they said about me has always mattered more than what anybody else has ever said about me.
You work in the space of racial equity and you know how to talk about it in a way that isn't inflammatory, but anybody changing schools at that age has a difficult adjustment. How did that change you, that experience, in terms of how you viewed people of other races, or if at all, how you viewed yourself?
I think how I viewed myself, I questioned myself a lot. I questioned, quite frankly, I mean, in full transparency, like, am I smart enough for this? Is this the right place for me? Can I get through this? There were times it was tough. And I also intentionally sought my tribe. So I didn't make a lot of friends with people outside of my race. I intentionally sought relationships, honestly, kind of clamoring for what I had left behind from my elementary school, where those were some of my best friends from kindergarten to fifth grade. So I gravitated towards other Black kids. It was an awkward sixth grade for sure. When I thought about people who were not Black, it was more so that I just didn't think about them.
What would you say to like an 11 or 12-year-old Kimberly Allen at this point, if you could?
I'd say relax. As challenging as the moment is, really sort of sit back and take it all in and make sure that you know that you are enough in any and all of those situations. Don't be afraid to speak up. I was really quiet in sixth grade, probably more quiet than people probably expected, and certainly expect now. But not being afraid to be vocal. You are smart enough. You are good enough, and you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Honestly, there was a bit of a defining moment in high school for me. I remember my senior year, we were in a history class and someone said, I don't even remember what the discussion was this day, but the words that this young lady said that stood out to me and they still stick with me. And she said something to the effect of, why would we send aid to Africa, like as in like the US? Why would the US send financial resources to Africa? They're all going to die of AIDS in 5 years anyway. And I remember I walked out of the class. I looked at my friend and I walked out of class that day.
In the middle of class?
In the middle of class, I got up and walked out. My teacher came out. I was like, I'm sorry. She said that, do you want her to apologize? And I said, I don't never want anyone to apologize to me for saying what's really in their heart. And so I went back to class and, I don't even remember if anything came of it. I don't remember talking to her again. I don't remember if the teacher said, I don't know if he said anything when I walked out. I don't know what happened. But for me, that was a moment of the fact that this sort of ideology exists. Like, somebody has to do something somewhere about it. And so going to Florida State and trying to understand how people thought. So I majored in psychology. I did some classes in sociology. I took public policy classes, public health classes, because I wanted to understand as much as I could about how people came to think the things that they thought.
It's interesting when you talk about that instance that happened when you were in high school and what that student said and your reaction, because it seems that there's a bit of a through line there in terms of your position, that you don't want people to hide what their beliefs are and you don't want to be told something else. You want to help people acknowledge where they are, wherever that is, and then talk to them about it.
Right. I don't think we get anywhere by forcing people to wear a facade. I don't want a fake apology. I don't want something insincere. You spoke what felt true to you, right? And if in that moment I was not who I am today and let me help you grow and understand better, that was not where I was at the time. But over time, I have developed a knack for helping people get there because I know that there are more people who are like I was, and they're not in the space to help teach and grow folks. We don't have the patience. There's just, it's too much. We get heated, right? But I've developed a level of patience, I think, and tolerance for, okay, here's where you are. At least if you're willing to hear something different, we can have an exchange. And I'm not trying to get you from point A to Z in a 2-hour conversation. But if you're open, I'd love to develop a relationship with you and show you something different.
How do you think your view of Jacksonville from the time that you were young and living in that somewhat insular world and somewhat protected, as you say, how has your view of Jacksonville changed in the years since then and now that you're an adult?
It almost kind of makes me sad in some ways because when I hear some of the narrative, for example, about Northwest Jacksonville or the East Side, I that's not my memory actually. And I just said this in another space. The safest I have felt in my life has been on the East Side, has been on the North Side, the safest I felt. And so when I hear some of the narrative that these places are not safe or these places are endangered, it's really disheartening because I know for a fact that there are what we are describing certainly at what I believe a systems level of issues that are happening. But the individuals and the people that are there are just like everybody else from all over the place. And I think the more we can connect people to people, we'll start to see that more. And I will say there is a significant need to address the systems that have allowed some of the outcomes and things that are we know to be true in those communities as well, that we have to action policies that are going to address those things. What we have done, I think, as a society has that we have seen these outcomes and we have said that those people, whoever those people are, don't want better versus saying there is something at play here that is impacting these people that we really need to address. And we've dehumanized them in so many ways. And I think my personal goal is that we return the humanity to those communities and allow them to help drive the solutions. Because again, to the same token of I don't want a false apology or sort of this facade of an interaction. I also don't want you to guess at how you should treat me. And so I think the same for these communities. We shouldn't be guessing about how to solve their problems or the issues that they face. They live there, they live in their skin, they live in their communities every single day. They see their challenges. We should be taking our cues from them, period, and returning the humanity and the dignity to them that they deserve and respect the expertise that they have as the drivers of their lives.
You have 4 children now.
Hmm.
What kind of mom are you? How do you parent and how does the work that you do impact or interplay with how you parent?
That's an interesting question. I think that I think I'm a relatively calm parent, but I expect excellence from my children. And my children they are beautiful and they are brilliant. I really do harp on them on about just life skills. I'm not worried about their classroom behavior. I'm not worried about their grades because they knock that out of the park every time. I want to make sure that you know how to be a good human being, that you know how to self-regulate, that you know how to speak up for yourself. Like all of those things that I try to impart on them. My children have encountered things that I wish that I could have provided them an environment like the one I grew up in, a protected environment where they had an opportunity to solidify the positivity of their Black experience before they were exposed to how other people think of them. Because very early on, they are experiencing things much earlier than I did with, being called outside of their name, being called racial epithets, having their hair touched without consent, in all of these things they are experiencing far younger than I am, that just like the experience I described to you stayed with me from all those years ago, these experiences are going to stay with them for their lives. And so I do my best to surround them with as many positive Black influences as possible, because I know that they need it. And I know that that indeed will help carry them and refute the negative things that they might encounter about themselves that others perceive. I don't want my kids to, I don't parent from a place of fear. I parent from a place that they are thriving and that they will thrive. And it's my job to make sure that their environment is also pouring into them positively so that they thrive.
Is there a particular instance that you're comfortable talking about that you experienced or shared with them in terms of their early exposure to things that were happening in the world?
Yeah. So my oldest came home when he was 2, and he told me he was Black. He's at daycare. He's not at school. He told me he was, well, yeah, you are Black, as a matter of fact. But who told you that? And what was the context in which they told you that? My oldest, in third grade, has also been called the N word several times. My oldest daughter has people who were like, "Oh, your hair is so fluffy," and they just want to like touch her hair. It's so different. They touch her hair without her permission. I've had instances in daycare where the kids would put dirt and things from the playground in my girl's hair because it stays in their hair. I've had instances where my girls have been talked about because they're darker skinned. We're talking a 5, a 9, and an 11-year-old who have already had these experiences that we have to explain to them as parents, to say, again, that piece about advocating for yourself. Say, no, don't do that. Don't touch my hair. Don't put things in my hair. Don't call me the N word. As a matter of fact, don't use any sort of, like, don't tell me racist jokes at all. Like, we have very intentional conversations, and we tell them, like, there's a way that you can address these things. You don't have to be rude or disrespectful to advocate for yourself. But you need to advocate for yourself, because if you don't, they will think these things are okay. And if you're okay with them, then you and I need to have a discussion, because I'm uncomfortable with it. So, and it's them talking to their teachers and things like that too.
I mean, I want to ask you that because you're helping them in a situation, and those are very difficult situations, but you help them and then you also have to process. So how do you cope with that as a mom?
I am a mama bear, so I am first angry. And that's just as honest as I can be. I'm angry first, and I want to understand. Okay, tell me the whole story so I can make sure I'm not overreacting to what you're telling me happened. And then I get frustrated at the situation, and then I get frustrated again at a system that says we shouldn't even be talking about these things in school. And I say, well, if we don't want our kids to learn history in its true form, but they can say these words and not understand them, to me that is a misalignment of values and mission, because my kids are being taunted with these things. And I have to come home and do a lesson with them about you're beautiful. Your skin is just as sun-kissed and beautiful as it is intended to be. You are not what they said you are. You are, and I will say your name. You are this person. You are my son, my daughter. You are our children. So you are brilliant. You are bright. You are, I have to do those affirmations with them so that they know. And then my husband and I have to go and have pillow talk about how how frustrated we are, and if we need to take another step and we need to go to the teacher. Do we need to go to administrators? And for the most part, our kids have been really good about, no, we will, have this conversation with the person. They really are good about that before we have to step in. But they're, again, 5, 9, and 11. They shouldn't have to be advocating for themselves about that.
Well, and to your point about what's being taught in the classroom, the idea governing the recent changes being we don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. We don't want anyone to be hearing lessons that might make them feel lesser than. But that occurring in a context in which obviously those lessons are being taught extracurricularly to students of color in many cases.
Yeah, and history taught at an age appropriate level does not have to be uncomfortable. Kids are very curious and they're very resilient. We are putting our adult lens on children who are just naturally wanting to know more.
Do you bring your work home with you?
All the time. All the time.
You've been executive director since 2021, which was a very interesting time to take that role. It seemed at that time we were in a period of really great momentum, or at least kind of a serious reckoning on race. And since then, there has been, I think a lot of people would agree, a backlash, some of it legislative, some of it just sort of philosophical or out there in the ether. And I would imagine your role has whipsawed a bit in terms of the conversations you were being invited to have and now perhaps are being told you can't have.
It has been an interesting journey to certainly watch the response, to watch the pendulum swing from where everybody was sort of all in this moment. And we really do want to know better, know more, know better, know people and policies and things differently. And to see where we are now, because whether it's because of policy, whether it's just because it felt like too much was changing at one time, whatever the reason is, it has been a challenge to see sort of the regression or the withdrawal from this work. But somebody, Dr. Gail Christopher, did a talk with the Jacksonville Urban League a couple months ago, and she said the progress is actually still happening. If we zoom out, the progress of what was quote unquote started with George Floyd is actually still happening, but the places where we're situated, like a Jacksonville right now, or in Florida, where it seems like all of these policies are coming out against it, it seems like it is really dampening down the impacts. But if we zoom out and look at a macro level, changes is still happening. People, communities are still marching forward with initiatives, with ideas, with work that is going about achieving racial equity. Watching my team and my board work endlessly to fulfill this mission is rewarding. And the spaces and places where we are still welcomed and invited is encouraging. And I have said from the very beginning, even if there are folks who start the journey with us or they start out on this train and they get off, we will make sure that there is a door always still open for them, because this is a process and the process is not always linear for people. There are folks who get intimidated, maybe get their feelings hurt sometimes, maybe it gets uncomfortable and awkward, it becomes unpopular, they retreat. The time will come again where the knowledge that's been imparted will tickle you in the right moment. You'll come back. The door will always be open for that. There is always an opportunity for what I would consider redemption or transformation. Even if you decide to ignore it for now, you will be reminded. And when you are reminded, there is always space and grace.
Well, Dr. Kimberly Allen of 90 Forward, thanks so much for doing this.
I appreciate it, Anne. Thank you.